They were called visionaries, heroes, and revolutionaries, the men who shaped the foundation of the United States. But what if the story you've been told about America as founding fathers irons to the whole truth? What if beneath the noble words of liberty and equality, there were untold struggles, rivalries, betrayals, and hidden motivations that reveal a far more complex picture? This is not the textbook version of history. This is the real story behind the founding fathers, where fact and myth collide, and the truth challenges everything we thought we knew about America's birth. From secret deals made in candlelit rooms to power struggles masked by patriotic ideals, the journey of America's creation was far darker, more human, and more fascinating than legend suggests. The tale begins in the mid-18th century, an age of empires, where 13 colonies stretched along the Atlantic coast, bound by British law yet restless with ambition. The founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and others, were not born revolutionaries. They were wealthy landowners, lawyers, scientists, and merchants who benefited from the very system they would one day overthrow. Yet, as taxes rose and British control tightened, their loyalty turned to resentment. But make no mistake, this revolution was not born purely from idealism. Behind their call for freedom lay economic interests, personal pride, and a vision for a new kind of power. Washington wanted independence not only from Britain, but from a system that kept him indebted to the crown. Jefferson, though he wrote about equality, owned hundreds of slaves. Franklin, who preached virtue, lived a life of secret liaisons and complex alliances. And Hamilton, the self-made genius, believed in a strong central government that would one day rival monarchies themselves. The myths often portray them as united, but in truth, they were deeply divided. The Continental Congress was a battlefield of ideas, Federalists against Anti-Federalists, idealists versus pragmatists. While they agreed on liberty, they clashed over its meaning. To Adams, liberty was order. To Jefferson, it was the right to defy power. Hamilton sought financial strength. Madison sought a balanced republic. Their debates were fierce. Some nearly tore the fragile Union apart before it even began. The Declaration of Independence, hailed as a document of pure idealism, was also a carefully worded act of political strategy. Its soaring lines about equality were drafted to unite colonies that still practiced slavery. Its accusations against King George III omitted the founders' own contradictions, such as their treatment of Native Americans and enslaved Africans. When Jefferson penned "All men are created equal," he did so while his own plantation was worked by those denied that very promise. Yet, to understand them fully, one must see them not as saints, but as visionaries trapped by the realities of their time. Their brilliance lay in crafting a system flexible enough to grow, a nation built on ideas powerful enough to eventually challenge even their own flaws. But the cost of their choices was immense. The Revolutionary War, often romanticized, was brutal and uncertain. Soldiers starved at Valley Forge while Congress argued over pay. Washington, revered today as a flawless leader, lost more battles than he won. His true genius lay in endurance, in the belief that persistence could outlast empire. When victory came at Yorktown, it wasn't just through heroism. It was through the help of France, a monarchy aiding a rebellion against monarchy itself. Few Americans realized that without French ships, loans, and soldiers, independence might have been impossible. After the war, unity proved harder than victory. The Articles of Confederation left the states fractured and weak. Chaos loomed, rebellions, debt crises, foreign threats. In this storm, men like Hamilton and Madison saw an opportunity to build a stronger nation. But their plan, the Constitution, was met with fear. Many saw it as replacing one tyranny with another. The debates in Philadelphia were intense, often secretive. Compromises were struck that haunt America even today. The Three-Fifths Compromise, born from the South's insistence on counting enslaved people for representation. The Electoral College, designed to balance small and large states. And the Senate, created to temper pure democracy with elite control. Every clause was a negotiation between ideals and interests, between liberty and power. Benjamin Franklin, the oldest delegate, famously said after signing the Constitution, "I agree to this Constitution with all its faults." He knew they had built something imperfect, but also revolutionary. The myth says they trusted the people. In truth, many of them feared mob rule. The founders believed liberty required structure, and democracy needed restraint. They created a republic not of absolute freedom, but of controlled power, a system where ambition would check ambition. Washington's presidency embodied that balance. Though many wanted him to rule for life, he stepped down after 2 terms, setting a precedent that would define American democracy. Yet, beneath his image of calm virtue, Washington struggled with moral conflicts, especially over slavery. In private letters, he expressed discomfort with the institution, yet in public, he never moved to end it. It wasn't until his death that he freed the people he enslaved. Jefferson, meanwhile, expanded the nation through the Louisiana Purchase, an act that doubled America's size but also fueled the dispossession of native tribes. His words inspired revolutions abroad, yet his personal contradictions grew darker. He died in debt, his estate sold to pay creditors. Hamilton, the immigrant visionary, transformed America's economy but died in a duel, shot by Aaron Burr, another founding father consumed by ambition. Adams and Jefferson, once allies turned rivals, reconciled in old age, dying on the same day, July 4, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration. Some call it coincidence, others, destiny. Over time, America turned these flawed men into monuments. Their faces carved into mountains, their names attached to schools and cities. But in glorifying them, we often buried the truth. They were not gods. They were men of genius and hypocrisy, courage and contradiction. Their vision birthed liberty, but their compromises planted seeds of future conflict, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement. Yet perhaps that is what makes their story timeless. The founders never gave us a perfect nation. They gave us a framework to strive toward one. Their genius was not that they were infallible, but that they designed a system that could evolve beyond their own limitations. Even today, the myths around them persist. We're taught that they all believed in freedom, but whose freedom? We're told they stood together, but for how long? The truth is, America's founding was not a single moment of unity, but a constant struggle between ideals and interests. That struggle still defines the nation. Understanding their humanity does not diminish them. It makes their achievements even more remarkable. Because the real story of the Founding Fathers is not about perfection, but perseverance. Not about saints, but visionaries who dared to imagine a world that had never existed. As we peel back the myths and confront their contradictions, we find not disappointment, but depth. We see men who are flawed, yes, but capable of extraordinary courage. We see the birth of a nation not as a miracle, but as a choice, fought for, argued over, and built upon compromise. In knowing the truth, we honor them more deeply, for we understand the cost of what they created. A republic born from imperfection, guided by ideals and carried forward by generations determined to make its promise real. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of all, that even in their flaws, they gave us the freedom to question, to challenge, and to seek a more perfect union than they themselves could ever achieve.